It's been a while since I've made a video, and I think that the subject that has recently popped up, especially from TFM's channel, is quite a good reason to, of course, make a video. And I'm going to be talking about that just briefly, and of course, you can probably tell what I'm talking about from, of course, the title of this video. But I'm going to go ahead and explain what the Spanish model is. Now, the Spanish model, in my opinion, and I'm going to coin the term right now, is essentially Anita Sarkeesian's model of listen and believe. In Spain, effectively speaking, if you are a man and you get into a dispute with your partner, the accusation of violence can be made, and rarely is this accusation properly investigated, and rarely, if ever, are the men in these situations given the kind of treatment that they are, of course, entitled to in any society that respects justice, freedom, liberty, and, of course, due process. There was a video made, or I should say released by MGTOW 101 back in February the 28th that goes over in a great degree of detail about, these particular cases in Spain. And I'm going to add that to the low bar since I do think that it's a very important piece of content that is very much a harbinger of what is to come. Now, the reason why I believe this particular video, this particular model, the Spanish model, is the harbinger of what is to become is recently due to, of course, TFM's video. Now, to me, what TFM's video really signifies is basically the end of any kind of opposition towards the move towards, of course, the Spanish model in the United States. Now, from my understanding, Oklahoma is a dark red state. It is not a Democrat state. And, to me, this is really confirming what I've already seen in Australia. The epidemic of domestic violence, the fanciful and frankly ridiculous notion that is, has been adopted and pushed by both sides of politics in Australia. We live in a society where there is no opposition to this kind of fear-mongering, bigotry and hate that, of course, these institutions like to push. And I really do think that the foundation has been set, because when you take a look at it, for example, college rape campuses, it's pretty much common knowledge on the part of anyone who's being honest that the college, or actually the campus tribunals are nothing like, say, for example, a criminal court or even a civil court. You don't get the same degree of respect, recognition, and dignity that you would out of a court as you would, for example, a campus tribunal. And there are very real consequences to being found guilty in these tribunals, such as, an enormous loss of wealth and money, and potentially a great degree of interference towards your academic career. And this is where I really think that the foundation's been laid. It is entirely acceptable as a society for men to have their civil rights stripped of them, for them to be taken into kangaroo courts and to be bent over and figuratively fucked in the ass. To me, this pretty much is the harbinger of what is to come. The Spanish model is what's going to happen all over the world. It is not a matter of if, but it is a matter of when. When you look at Australia, for example, the definition of domestic violence is so broad and ambiguous that driving 2 kilometers over the speed limit, an act that I might add is illegal in Australia, though not advisable, could easily be considered dangerous driving. Denying someone who has a gambling addiction access to your money to pay, of course, could also be considered domestic violence. Even at one point, according to the parliamentary definition, refusing to engage in sex with a person could be considered domestic violence. So essentially, this is where our society is going. Essentially, by the looks of it, we're just going really off the deep end. And I can't really suggest a remedy to this problem because, both sides of politics consider this to be acceptable, and there is no meaningful opposition to this kind of fear-mongering or this kind of, bigotry. So, I mean, to me, this has just become fashionable. This has become the norm, so to speak. And the only way to find, of course, to avoid this problem is simply not to engage in any kind of context or relationship of any kind that may expose you to this kind of risk. However, for a great many people, that just would never be considered acceptable. The risk is, for some reason, apparently to them, worth it. But to me, I mean, this is just going to get worse, and it is going to get worse and worse, and it is going to spread like a cancer. There really isn't much in the way that would ever particularly solve this, because at the end of the day, no matter how bad it gets, men lack the capacity to actually do anything about it. No matter how many times their civil rights are stomped on, they fundamentally fail to ever address the problem. They're perpetually in a state of where it either doesn't matter or it isn't important to them, so they just ignore these issues and they get worse and worse as time goes by. To me, there's no real remedy I can particularly suggest, society-wise. This is just going to get worse and worse, day after day, year after year. It's going to spread over continent, over societies, and it's just going to get worse and worse to the point where, in essence, a woman points the finger and says, this guy has done this. In essence, there's going to be no competition. There's going to be no investigation. There's going to be no debate. This is what's happened in Spain, and it's what's going to happen worldwide. And I'm yet to hear a legitimate solution to this problem. But what I think this does tell us is that both sides of the political fence give half a fuck. Well, I think I should say they give less than half a fuck for, the rights of anyone who isn't an upper middle class white woman. And I'd also say that the traditionalist conservative movement is pretty much just full of shit. Because the Republicans and the right wing of the political fence tend to lean more to the tradcon perspective. And why exactly the traditionalist conservatives can't coordinate with these Republicans to establish a common platform and sort of like a, standard as to what they're looking for is personally beyond me. I mean, the traditionalist conservatives will talk a big game about, the family unit, but they'll fundamentally do nothing to try to reform it or make it better. They'll do nothing to address the enormous and frankly disgusting differential of power that exists within the family unit. They won't actually do anything to solve these problems, but they'll, go on about how it's oh so awesome. I mean, it's just like Return of Kings. They know the problems that exist, but they're not willing to do anything about them when they have the power, as it currently stands, to do so. I mean, the Republicans are pretty much control both houses of the Senate and pretty much control Congress. So why they don't make any kind of moves towards improving this contract that they love so much is personally beyond me, and I dare say it's because the tradcon movement is really just gynocentric. It's not willing to actually do anything towards progressing towards its utopian dream other than perhaps proselytize and perhaps engage in some hand-waving and name-calling. Either way, I'm going to leave this video right here. I might make some more later on, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. That's all. Goodbye.